speaking of Buddhism in particular, or Dharma, there's a lot here in the West. I think I'm in the U.S. You're in the U.S. That it's they've taken. I say they a lot of enthusiasts or practitioners have taken Buddhism and Dharma and that kind of practice and made it a very like I don't know how to say this, like a psychology, mental health thing, which does it. I mean, it absolutely does have application there, right? It's
Sure.
wonderful, but but it seems sometimes that it's just kept they like just keep it at that, and that seems to not fully appreciate the so like again, this is exploring higher realities, right? So there's the mental health aspect, incredibly important, but there's so much more that is offered in the Dharma, from cosmology to ways to have direct experience in these kind of things. So where do you sit with that?
Yeah, so I understand the generational strategic decisions that were made to bring meditation, which was thought of as outside, weird, hippie, Eastern stuff or whatever, and to bring that into the clinical mainstream, people had to make some strategic decisions. And these strategic decisions involved saying things like, this is just attention training. It's not religion or spirituality. You're learning to calm down, to regulate yourself, to pay attention to thoughts as thoughts and see your feelings as feelings. What's weird about that? What could happen? What could that do? Yes, somewhere in the background, there's stuff like Buddhism and Hinduism, various attention training traditions and contemplative stuff, but we don't talk about that. We're just going to say this is learning to see emotions as emotions, feelings as feelings, thoughts as thoughts, and to gain some peace and some spaciousness and some equanimity in the face of those, the ability to be more mindful or meta-mindful of your experience, all of which are great things. Like, I totally get it. These are great things. I'm a fan. And yet, they also then said things like it doesn't cause any side effects, it can't do anything weird, there's nothing strange to see here. All the stuff they said in the old books only happens on super intensive retreats and very limited practice context to a few rare people in a cave or something, And this is kind of and they knew better, right? They knew, they knew it could do a lot more than that, but that, I think, understandably was not what the clinical mainstream was interested in handling. And so 30 to 40 to however many years later, that really, in some ways, that really kind of came into the fore with John Kabat-Zinn around 1979 with the mindfulness movement. And but now I think the world has moved forward, and now we have like neuroscience on deep stages and states, and we have the appreciation that there might be tremendous potential to take these things a lot further. We have the psychedelic renaissance, which is engendering a lot of these experiences, either temporarily or more long lasting, or giving people tastes, sometimes in a very confusing or kaleidoscopic way of what might be possible. I mean, most of my hippie teachers came into this, they did a bunch of psychedelics, and then they were like, okay, there's a there, and then they got into meditation. So, and that's happening to a lot of people now. And so, I think the clinical medical mainstream world has come to a point where it is hopefully mature enough to really appreciate much more of the depth of these traditions, both in their transformative and healing potentials to really, elevate consciousness is a very sort of hippie way to put it, but to do something that is profoundly beneficial and to shift the mind into different perception modes and to give some really amazing skills, and also to recognize that that can be a very weird process. It can cause a lot of confusing experiences that a more materialist, muggly, if we can borrow that term from Harry Potter, clinical world may not really understand or appreciate, or might be prone to labeling as mental illness or psychosis or delusions or hallucinations. And so we do a lot of work in the EPRC to try to figure out how to meet the epistemic needs, meaning the how do you know of the clinical mainstream, and how do you know that maybe all this stuff isn't just crazy? How do you know that maybe some of it has transformative potential? How do you know that there are better ways to relate to it than, say, shutting it all down with meds and saying you're broken for life, which has happened to a lot of people I have talked with, or saying you are psychotic, you are bipolar, you will always need to be on meds, stuff like that, for processes that seem like just garden variety meditation experiences to me. And so figuring out how to give them the evidence that they need in the clinical mainstream to be more comfortable with an expanded palette of diagnostic options, of management options, of ways to relate to these things, particularly in particular cultural contexts. So, like culturally sophisticated ways to relate to these traditions to allow people's experiences to be way less closeted and way more appreciated in a way that isn't automatically pathologizing or, potentially quite harmful to people.